Well, I enjoyed this book so much, the start of it, and I hope you did too. So we're going to read some more of this book today. Biggest ears. Oh, so if you didn't catch the first part of the video, it's all of different pets that were in the White House. Wacky ones, not the typical. This one's called Biggest Ears. President James Buchanan was too old and cautious to make hard decisions. The nation was divided over slavery, and Buchanan refused to take sides. 7 southern states ended up leaving the Union. They set up their own Confederate States of America. Buchanan was the only president never to marry. His married friends were worried that the bachelor president might be lonely in the White House, so they were always sending him animals to keep him company. The King of Siam presented Buchanan with a herd of elephants. They were the first White House pets to arrive with their own trunks. However, some animals were too big to live in the White House, so the president wisely decided to donate them to the local zoo. After all, elephants are the symbol for the Republican Party, and Buchanan was a Democrat. One of the president's friends decided to send him a more patriotic pet, a pair of bald eagles. This majestic bird is on the presidential seal. However, they were sent to live at Wheatland, President Buchanan's Pennsylvania home. By day, the disappointed eagles walked the grounds. At night, they slept in twin cages on the back porch. Buchanan owned one of the biggest dogs ever to live in the White House, a Newfoundland named Lara. At 170 pounds, the huge Newfie looked more like a bear than a dog. Lara became famous in Washington for her ability to lie still for hours, one eye open and one eye closed. Can you do that? The president and Lara must have made an interesting pair. Buchanan was nearsighted in one eye and farsighted in the other. He made up for it by always cocking his head to the left. Who's next? This is called the luckiest pet. Few presidents achieved as much in their term as Abraham Lincoln. He led the country during the bloody Civil War. He also issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which officially ended slavery in all the rebel states. Times were hard for Lincoln during this difficult period in history, but he had a loving family, including 2 young sons, Tad and Willie, along with their pets. These mischievous boys never failed to raise their father's spirits. Honest Abe was the first president in office to wear a beard. However, he wasn't the only one in the White House with whiskers. Lincoln's youngest son, Tad, owned a pair of goats, Nanny and Nanko. Like Tad, the frisky goats were given full run of the White House. Tad liked to hitch the goats to chairs for racing carts. President Lincoln was amused by his son's pranks, but Mrs. Lincoln wasn't laughing. Tad liked to charge through his mother's formal parties. One day, Lincoln had an appointment in the city. He decided to take Tad and his goats along for the ride. Lincoln's assistant was shocked. He refused to sit next to the barnyard animals. Guess who rode in the carriage and who stayed behind? Another time, Nanny was missing. Finally, Mary Ann Cuthbert, the chief housekeeper for the White House, found naughty Nanny. She was curled up in the middle of Tad's bed, chewing her cud. In 1863, friends sent the Lincolns a live turkey for Thanksgiving dinner. Tad named him Jack, and he became a favorite pet. When Tad discovered Jack's fate, he burst into his father's office. Tad begged for Jack's life. President Lincoln listened carefully to his son. Then he wrote the lucky turkey a presidential pardon, which means they would not kill the turkey. And I believe that is a tradition still today, that the president will pardon a turkey and let it live. Most secret pets. Vice President Andrew Johnson never expected to become president. But when President Lincoln was assassinated, the vice president had no choice. Now that the Civil War was over, it was Johnson's job to restore the Union. He had a hard time. When Congress tried to impeach him, the president must have felt as if he didn't have a friend in the world, except for his secret pets. One summer, President Johnson left his favorite secretary, William Moore, let him in on a secret. He told him how he had discovered his new little pets. The night before, he had found some mice scurrying about, looking for food in his room. The president had left the little creatures a handful of flour. "I am now filling the basket for them tonight," the president confided. The next day, the secretary asked President Johnson about his tiny friends. "The little fellows gave me their confidence," the president said. "I gave them their basket and poured some water into a bowl on the hearth for them." Andrew Johnson didn't like to see any creature go hungry. Perhaps he remembered from his childhood what it felt like to have an empty stomach. Johnson's parents were so poor they couldn't afford to send him to school. Soon after the future president married his wife, Eliza, she taught him to read and write. President Johnson liked to help the poor and the weak. It didn't matter if they were mice or men. Just think about that. He grew up so poor he couldn't read or write or go to school, and yet he became president. Amazing. Oh, biggest menagerie. Theodore Roosevelt charged into the 20th century. He was the first president to fly in an airplane, ride in a car, and submerge in a submarine. But this robust president never lost his love of nature. He saved millions of acres of wilderness. However, no place was more full of wildlife than the president's own home. Theodore Roosevelt had more than 40 pets. And the Roosevelt State Park or National Park, I'm not sure which it is, out in North Dakota is a really nice place to visit. His teenage daughter, Alice, wanted an attention-getting pet. Her garter snake was named Emily Spinach because it was as green as spinach and as thin as Alice's Aunt Emily. Alice loved attending elegant parties with Emily Spinach. She would wait for a quiet moment, crack open her purse, and let Emily slither out. The president's daughter would laugh as she watched the ladies race for the door, screaming. Emily wasn't the only Roosevelt who liked snakes. Once, her brother Quentin barged into the Oval Office with a bag full of squirming snakes. When he dropped them onto the table to hug his father, chaos broke out. The 5-foot king snake attacked the other snakes. The senator scrambled for safety as the reptiles did battle. Oh my word. Nothing could separate the 6 Roosevelt children from their beloved pets. When Archie was sick in bed with the measles, his brothers knew how to cheer him. They sneaked a calico pony named Algonquin into the White House elevator up to Archie's bedroom. There was just one problem. Algonquin was a vain little pony, and there was a mirror in the elevator. The pony fell in love with his own reflection, so the boys had a hard time pulling him out. No pet was turned away from the Roosevelt Zoo, including a one-legged rooster. Wilder pets such as a lion, a hyena, 5 bears, and a zebra were sent to live at their summer White House in Oyster Bay, Long Island. Wow, that's a lot. Most wholesome. At more than 330 pounds, William Taft was our largest president. Despite his size, Taft disappeared behind the larger-than-life figure of the previous president, Teddy Roosevelt. No matter how hard Taft tried, everybody liked Roosevelt better. At least President Taft could comfort himself with a glass of fresh milk that he loved. Taft enjoyed fine food and fresh milk so much, he brought his own cow to the White House. Mooly Wooly. Mooly Wooly was her name. There were no dairy companies to deliver milk in those days. Cows were considered both practical and gentle pets. Poor Mooly Wooly's milk wasn't up to the president's standards. Move over, Mooly Wooly. A handsome Holstein named Pauline Wayne quickly replaced her. When Pauline wasn't being chased across the White House lawn by 11-year-old Charlie Taft, she was busy producing milk for the president. Taft hired a man just to look after Pauline. Every day he brought Pauline's milk to the White House kitchen. And every day the president gulped down glass after glass of her creamy, fresh milk. In return, the prize cow got to sleep in the garage next to the president's elegant cars. The horse stable had been converted to a garage. Taft was the first president to buy automobiles for the White House. Pauline wasn't the first cow to graze on the White House lawn. Sadly, she was the last. Unlike the cows, Taft's story had a happy ending. After he left office, he was appointed Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, his dream job, and lost 90 pounds. Okay, probably one more. S. Gardner. A former college professor, Woodrow Wilson, was a man of ideas. He fought hard to help the country win World War I. He fought just as hard to keep world peace with his League of Nations. Though the League ultimately disbanded, Wilson's idea for a world organization of nations does exist. It's called the United Nations. During World War I, times were hard for Americans. All the young men were off fighting. Who was going to mow the White House lawn? Because all the men were gone. President Wilson had an idea. He would set an example for government rationing. As part of the war effort, he brought in a flock of grass-eating sheep. He also brought in a tobacco-chewing ram named Old Ike. And a ram is a male sheep. Old Ike and his patriotic sheep did their job. They grazed on the White House lawn until it was trim. There was just one problem. The hungry sheep ate all the White House flowers, too. Old Ike became a popular figure. He was rarely seen without a wad of tobacco between his teeth, juices running down his beard. But Old Ike was polite. He always cleaned up after himself. After he finished chewing his wad, he swallowed it. After the war ended, Old Ike left the White House lawn, but a bit of him returned. It was a blanket woven from the old ram's wool. World War I was a time of plots and spies under every bed. So when the White House staff heard a loud tapping noise, they suspected spies at work. Could it be a secret code? When someone stepped out onto the roof to get some fresh air, they found their spy. A woodpecker was hammering away at the copper gutters. It's a good way to mow your lawn, isn't it? Okay, I hope you enjoyed this second segment of Wackiest White House Pets, and I think we might be able to have time to do a third segment. This book was written by Gibbs Davis and illustrated by David Johnson.